How y'all doing on this lovely Friday night? I'm Keturah Kendrick. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, you can say it. I'm not even going to feign humility, but thank you. I really like that. That was really freaking cool. So I am the host of the podcast Unchained, Unbothered, and I also wrote a book. You can clap now again. I want to thank you all, first of all, for coming out tonight on Dragon Boat Weekend. Can I tell you, I have been gestating this damn book for 3 years. And this party is serving several purposes. Obviously, it's serving the purpose of celebrating, getting no thanks out to you. It'll be available to the general public on June 18th. Don't worry, there's information on the back of those cards for you later on. But 3 days ago, I turned 44 years old. Oh, stop. And by stop, I mean, please do go on. And in about 2.5 weeks, I will be leaving the wonderful city of Shanghai to return to the love of my life, New York City. So we are celebrating the book, we're celebrating my birthday, and we're celebrating my bye-bye to the high. So thank you for coming for all 3 of those celebrations. Appreciate you. I want to thank Lychee, the super sexy Whitney said, when she walked in, she said, oh, this place is so you. And I was like, girl, who are you telling? The super sexy Lychee for hosting tonight. I want to thank, most importantly, Kristen's family with the liaison. Give her a hand. If y'all need an event plan anywhere here in the high, Kristen's family. Oh, she's over there with the liaison. So here's how the next portion will work. For about 35-40 minutes, my homie, Mr. Marcel Daniels, will chit-chat with me about the book, about my process, and you'll get more information about what you can read within the pages. I'm going to do a very short reading from 2 key chapters that sort of symbolize the central themes of the book for about 5 or 10 minutes. Then there'll be cake. The cake will be chocolate. And there will be music. I do not recall what I requested, but I did request Prince, because if Prince had not died, this book would not have been written. Perhaps we'll talk about that in a second. But there'll be music, there'll be dancing, there'll be cake, there'll be some drinking. Not drinking, but drinking, which is different. So thank you for coming, and I will mingle and chit-chat with you more when we are eating cake and drinking. But I'll turn it over now to Mr. Marcel Daniels.
Yeah, you can clap for that, too. Yeah. All right, well, good evening, Lychee. Really great to see everyone here. Really happy to have everyone here to celebrate, as we said, the birthing of this wonderful, wonderful piece of literature. So, the first thing that I want to start with is actually at the beginning of the book. In the preface, you talk about writing this book because yourself 20 years ago would have really benefited from having read this book. Even though when we read this book, we learn that at that age, at that tender young age, 20 years ago, like 11, 12, so I don't like that. But at this age, there were a lot of really prescient insight that you had beyond what most people would expect of somebody at that age. But I wonder if you could open up by giving us a little profile of yourself, what your mind state was 20 years ago, so we can begin to explore the development of yourself over the years since.
Thanks. 23-year-old Keturah wanted to be someone that she did not have a prototype for. One of the things I write about in the last chapter of the book is how, for a child of the late 80s and 90s, obviously, every Thursday night, I was in front of Channel 6 watching The Cosby Show and then A Different World. But I did not see on those shows the black woman I wanted to be. I was clear that I loved men, I liked dudes, but I didn't see myself as someone's wife. I didn't see myself as living with someone 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I was clear that although I enjoyed my nieces and nephews, giving birth and raising children seemed ridiculous to me. It seemed like something that didn't necessarily feel right. I had stopped going to church somewhere around probably when I was a junior or senior in high school. And I remember being at the University of New Orleans, because I'm from New Orleans, Louisiana, and greatest city, second greatest city in the world. Yeah, go. I went to the University of New Orleans. I remember there being a class in the English department called The Bible as Literature, and wanted to take that class because I was beginning to doubt and question because I was raised as a fundamentalist Christian. I was raised Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm still unraveling some of the trauma from that experience. But I remember beginning to question if I believed in this God person, if I believed in all of the tenets of the Christian church as it's carried out in the 21st century in the West, which can be very misogynistic and very much its aim seems to be to control women, particularly women's bodies and sexuality. So I had all of these thoughts, and I didn't quite know that these thoughts existed elsewhere. And although New Orleans, all of you know it as Mardi Gras, and people show their boobs for breasts. First of all, that's not New Orleans; those are tourists. New Orleans is very much steeped in Catholicism, and the Bible Belt South is very conservative. And when you are a young, extremely progressive, extremely left-leaning feminist, you don't even have a word for it, being in an environment where you never see you. Yes, there's Claire Huxtable. Yes, there's Denise Huxtable. Yes, we have people who are happily married and, they have their good jobs, but I didn't see me. I didn't see a black woman who centered herself and who was not tamed with children or a husband. They tamed Denise Huxtable by season 3. She went to Africa to find herself, came back with a baby and a husband. And I was like, for real though? It's cool. She could have died in the bush. I guess that could have been worse, but why y'all couldn't just let her be free? So I just remember having all of these thoughts and feeling like I was crazy because no one else seemed to have them. And when I would voice certain things, like when my girlfriends would obsess about whether or not their boyfriends were husband material, or when people would and I would just say, I don't necessarily care, I don't see myself having children, I was reminded instantly that I was a freak of nature. So I just had all of these experiences where I just didn't see me, and I didn't think it was a big deal. Maybe I was just, different. It's no big deal. But when I started to write this book, I thought about, had I read this book, and first of all, I'm not naive enough to believe that this topic has not been covered. There's a lot of books in the world. Somebody wrote about this before. But had I known about it, had someone sent it to me, I don't know if it would have helped me, but at least I would not have felt crazy, and I would not have felt that I was alone.
So building on that, in your book, you talk about writing as a documentation of experiences and reflections, and through this book, it's a collection of stories through your own experiences and practices, but also a collection of stories of all kinds of women that you've met across your lifetime and experiences. Maybe you can describe a little bit about your process of recalling the stories, selecting the stories, and editing the stories, and communicating with the original storytellers to allow it to exist in this book in the format and the purpose that it serves.
Some of the stories, actually, the woman who's on this episode of my podcast, Tracy Adams, interviews me about the book. I've known her for 10 years, and one of the things that she says on the podcast is some of these things I remember us talking about when you first went to New York City. I remember us being in Joe's Pub in Fort Greene, and you were saying all of these things. Some of the women I called specifically, I really utilized Skype and Zoom a whole lot these last 3 years. And I said, I'm writing about this particular thing, and I know you have something to say. Most of it was intentional, speaking to friends and women I had met over the last 5 years before I was in Shanghai. I spent 2 years in Rwanda, in East Africa. So some of it was calling them and saying, I'm writing about the bizarre pushback that Black women particularly get when they simply say, motherhood is not my gig. I'm writing about being atheist and having to tell your parents that at Thanksgiving dinner. And I want your opinion on this. But I think one of the things I meant to do was, first of all, I am unapologetic in my ride or die nature for Black women specifically, wherever they are in the diaspora. And I take our stories very seriously. I think if a woman gives me her story either on my podcast or for this book, that is a delicate gift that we need to handle with care and with respect. So when I talk to women specifically for the book, and when I thought about conversations that I wanted to include in the book, I was very careful because some of the women I write about, they want to get married, they want to have children, they're very much traditional conservative, to each her own. And just being clear that I wanted to present that as here's a woman who is owning herself. Her freedom looks nothing like mine, but she is making her choices with intention. And how am I going to present that in a way that is respectful and that does not question or challenge her choices? Because I think that happens a lot in general, whether you make traditional or non-traditional choices, you're often questioned. In today's climate, you are questioned often. The legislature exists to limit your choices.
So as a woman from New Orleans, transplanting to New York City, you have a very specific viewpoint on the world, and things are seen through that lens. But then, of course, we are nothing but the accumulation of all of our experiences and the places we've been, the people we've talked to, et cetera, et cetera. In your book, you discuss traveling all the various myriad of places you've traveled all over the world. Maybe really quickly, if you can share a little bit about the places you traveled before I share this next question.
Sure. Let me tell you, y'all, I got it in. I spent 2 years in Rwanda and I got it in. I visited 13 African nations in my 2 years. Ghana times 3. I was dating a man who was insane in Ghana, so I went to Ghana a couple of times. Ghana times 3. Senegal times 2, because it's very beautiful and it's so New Orleans. It is so New Orleans. South Africa, Seychelles, Kenya, Congo, Ethiopia, Uganda. Just side note, if you are a party person, you need to go to Kampala. You have not partied. I'm not even a party person. I was up till 5 a.m. 2 nights in a row in Kampala. I was so glad to get my ass back to Rwanda because I was excited. Uganda. I went to Morocco, North Africa, a long time ago, like 10 years ago. And since I've been here in Asia, I've done Bali times 3, Malaysia. Have I done the Philippines? I can't recall. A couple of places in China. I went to Yellow Mountain. The what do you call it? The Kung Fu place. I forgot. Shaolin. Yes, Shaolin. I went on a school trip. Japan. I'm also a practicing Buddhist. One of the reasons why I chose to come here was the headquarters for the Soka Gakkai International, the organization I practice with in the States, is in Tokyo. So I've gone to Japan. So I think that's Mexico as well. I studied Spanish and ate tacos in Mexico.
So with all of those wonderful, amazing places that have their own distinct cultures and practices, there were similar themes in terms of interactions and expectations and projections upon you, upon women's bodies, and upon Black women's bodies in particular. And so given that you traveled all these different places and there's some similarities, maybe you can share some of the overarching themes within the context of some specific stories. Yeah.
One of the things that sticks out for me, because I travel alone a lot. I don't want to wait for people, and everybody want to go till you book a ticket. So I travel. Oh Lord, they're like, yes, preach, wow. I really didn't expect that. Like, yeah, girl, I just booked my ticket too. So about 85%, maybe 90% of my travel is done alone. And what I find absolutely fascinating, and by fascinating I mean a little bit bizarre, a woman traveling alone, people's reaction. First of all, men who think that your greatest joy is their penis when you're traveling alone, like, I really just want you to show me how to get to this restaurant. I wasn't asking you for your penis. I really meant how do you get to this restaurant. That's all I wanted. I really didn't want nothing else. It was just like, I just wanted you to tell me how to get to this restaurant. That's all I wanted. People's reaction to a woman traveling alone is so fascinating. So there is an assumption that you are trying to get over something. Like you just had... Like you're sad and they tell you you're so courageous. I'm like, have fun on a resort. I'm on a resort in a freaking Bahamas. This is the most bougie black lady shit you can ever do. What are you talking about? I'm like, you're so courageous. And it could be a blessing and a curse because people feel like you're lonely, so they want to talk to you. I always tell people women who are like, I'm afraid to travel alone. I'm like, you will actually meet more friends when you're alone because people think you're lonely. And sometimes it's annoying, sometimes it's cool, but they want to, I really am just enjoying reading my book and eating my little food, drinking my drink. And they will come and talk to you, but there's this assumption that you are getting over something, or you're sad, or maybe your boyfriend was supposed to be there and he left you, or it was supposed to be a girls' trip and they all bailed out. And so people's impression of me, and I remember when I first started traveling when I was in my late 20s, early 30s, the first place I went was either India or Mexico. And I just remember being surprised at people's perception of why I was traveling. They were just like, where are your people? And I was like, they're back in New York. I'm gonna see them in about a week. They'll be good. And I also remember when I traveled by myself and I've been in a relationship, again, it's fascinating. I had a friend tell me once, well, you can't just be going like you whenever you want to go now because you got a man. I was like, if he can't miss me for 2 damn weeks, like, I'm not going away for, it's just so people's perception of a woman traveling alone and what that means. And that is, again, it's rooted in this idea of loss or deficit. That you're sort of like if you say, I want to remain single. Like, I could have been married. I'm an attractive black woman with an American passport, and I did not leave Africa with a husband. That was intentional. Like, I could have been married within my first 4 months, right? So when people if we being for real, and I got the fucking blame, to be honest. So, right? So when you tell people, no, this is a conscious choice. I could have traveled with someone, and I do sometimes, but I'm enjoying this. The perception is quite fascinating. What I also found, too, is the idea of the American woman, especially as loose. So I've gone on dates when I've traveled on vacation, meet nice gentlemen when I'm out. I mean, I'm not above a nice man buying me a drink. Ain't never too many of those. You can never have a surplus of nice men buying you drinks. So I've gone out on dates with men I've met when I've traveled, and the assumption or the perception again that if you are alone, first of all, you have no one, you're not partnered, because why would a man let you go on your own to another country? And if you don't have a partner, then obviously you are available, because a woman who is not owned is available to everyone. Cab drivers, tour guides, anyone can proposition you when you do not have a male companion with you. So I think that has been a recurring thing. People not understanding why you would choose to travel alone, and that if you were traveling alone, there is some sort of deficit. There's a story other than there was a sea trip deal. And I took
Okay. All right. I actually want to pull a quote from your book. I really found this one poignant. So this quote right here: "The people who love us, expecting to contort ourselves, the people who love us, expecting us to contort ourselves into shapes that fit neatly into their lives." So this idea of people wanting us from a place of love, and you do put that in there very purposefully. I wanted you to talk a little bit about that quote right there, because it's not necessarily malicious, but we always have to look at the results of the action, the result of the expectation, the result of the words. So maybe you can connect that to an experience and then just talk also about how we can protect ourselves from these expectations.
I remember that quote coming from, again, a friend of mine who appears in the book as a composite, telling me about her story of graduating from Spelman College in Atlanta. There you go. Marcel is from Atlanta. And deciding that she wasn't going to move back home. She decided that she was going to stay in Atlanta. She was going to start her life elsewhere. And she was home for a family reunion. And her aunties and her mother cornered her and pretty much said to her, your mother needs you. You don't plan on coming back to Atlanta? And she's like, no, I'm going to move to New York City. And they were like, well, are you going to graduate school? You have a job? She was like, no, I just want to move to New York City. So they were guilting her for having the audacity to choose to create her life somewhere else. Now, she was in her 20s, so her mother couldn't have been more than mid to late 50s. Her mother was not an invalid. Her mother didn't need care. But this idea that we want you here and you have no real prospect. There is no fiance in New York City. There's no grad program there, so you belong here. So I think particularly for women, particularly for Black women, there is an expectation that every single agenda but your own must take preference. It must take preference. If you say, I want to move, you have to consider if your mama gonna like it, you have to consider if your daddy, and you're like, God damn, I just wanna move. I just wanna move. And while I say it comes from love, I do think there is an unintentional malice, because what that is someone bullying you and using DNA to justify it. And often, and I get a lot of pushback when I bring this up too, often it is the worship of Black mothers that we do that causes us to question if we push back against, especially against our mother, bullying us to have a baby, bullying us to get married, bullying us to stay in this little podunk town when you don't want to stay there no more. And I think you have to protect yourself. You have to, I feel like if a woman can own herself as soon as possible. Many women can't because you're young and you don't even know what ownership is of self. If a woman can own herself as early on as possible, it's on. God bless her soul. Because there will be so many people who try to convince you that all of these things you should want are in your best interest when it really is in theirs. It really is in theirs. So for you to be XYZ fits what they have decided you should be for whatever reason, and it makes them more comfortable. And when you decide that you're going to be A, B, and C because you simply want to, if there is no prototype, if the person who lovingly wants you to contort yourself and wrap that prison around you of what you should do, if you own yourself, you're better able to see, oh, this ain't got nothing to do with me. Because my friend, she listened to her mother because, Black mamas, yeah, mom, okay. And then she moved her ass to New York City. And every time she came home, her mama gave her things. And she's like, all right, it's been good. Can you take me to the airport? Because at the end of the day, I told this to a friend the other day, no one is going to help you with a choice you regret. They're actually going to tell you why you made that choice, even though a month ago they told you to make the damn choice. No one is going to help you with the choice you regret. No one is going to take ownership of the life you have except for you. And if you can commit to listening to your own voice and following it, as long as you are treating the people you love with respect and compassion, if you can listen to your own voice as early on as possible, the amount of time and anxiety that you can save yourself will be phenomenal.
So you have a wonderful chapter in there called the S word. And the S word begins with one idea, but then you break that word down and kind of expand it and repurpose it So we're initially talking about the label of being selfish, whatever that means, and then you kind of rejig it to the idea of, all right, this is actually self-love. This is something that I need to do. These ideas of what you're doing doesn't serve the purpose of what society deems for you, or for what the Black church wants for you, or for what this immediate family expects of you. But I'm doing and making these choices out of self-love. So let's talk about love. Let's talk about New York City. Let's talk about music. Let's talk about the things that make you happy, that continue to put that beautiful smile on your face, if I may say so.
Yes, you may.
If I may say so. So yes, let's talk about Prince. Let's talk about Janelle Monáe. Let's talk about C-Trip deals, because that's a real thing right there. Let's talk about all of that. What brings you joy?
That is an excellent question. What brings me joy? Everything brings me joy. Can I tell you? Let me tell y'all something, all y'all people who scared to turn 40. If I was this age when I was in my 20s, old folk would, it would be dangerous. I have successfully unchained myself from every other expectation that anyone has of me. I get joy, first of all, from people. I'm a practicing Nichiren Buddhist, and one of the things Nichiren Buddhism has given me is an even deeper connection and a deeper love for humans. I no longer question whether or not God exists or not. I don't think it's relevant. I think my loyalties lie with human beings, not supernatural ones. So I have a deep connection and love for people. I'm very much a people person. I'm very good Aries. So what brings me joy is brunch with drinks and my homegirls. I'm very clear on that. Joy comes from, like I talk about how Prince's death greatly impacted me. I started writing this book after he died because other than him being a musical genius and absolutely like otherworldly genius, he personified Black excellence. Like Prince recorded a song every damn day till the day he died. Prince recorded a song, and he was in pain, and he was also a hermit. He recorded a song every day. So I am committed to, like, I don't think I can put into words how deeply I value Blackness. To be clear, I don't just enjoy being Black. I deeply, deeply value Blackness, and I value being a woman. And I value being a woman, oddly enough, in the 21st century, even though, especially in the United States, it's quite, that's a whole nother story anyway. So what brings me joy is life. I find every single moment of life a gift, and I find it, even when I'm frustrated and tired, I find it to be a level of appreciation for having people in my life. I'm moving back to New York City because I realized how much I underestimated the circle of friends and family I had created in New York City. I missed the energy of the city. I missed my life in New York City. And I just missed the vibrancy. So I get joy through people, through connecting with people who I really feel a deep connection with. I get joy through eating. I'm from New Orleans, so I think about food a whole lot. Like, I think about food like a crazy amount of times. I get joy from listening to music. I get joy from making every single person in the room feel like I am grateful and glad that they are in the room, that without them being in the room would be different and in a bad way. I get joy from reading. I get joy from Alice Smith, one of my favorite singers. Just life and human beings bring me joy.
Earlier on in our conversation, you mentioned, just kind of as a caveat, that this is not the only text that exists to serve the purpose of empowerment or giving sovereignty to Black women or to women in general about their abilities to navigate through society unchained and unbothered. So maybe we can do two things. I'd like you to maybe talk about some of the other authors or other sources of inspiration that have empowered you along the years. and then talk about your work of empowering others through your podcast, the format of that, and what people can expect when they listen to it.
In addition to buying my book, you should go on Amazon and you should buy Brittany Cooper's Eloquent Rage, A Black Feminist Finds Her Superpower. First of all, she wrote the shit out that damn book. It's her third book, and I read the first two, and she is at her peak. And one of the things that she does well in Eloquent Rage is taking this idea of black women being angry and not running from it, and saying that there is power in useful and productive rage. And also this idea that, people can be more than one thing. Rage can exist with joy. It happens to me quite often, to be quite honest. So Eloquent Rage, because it makes black feminism tangible and not academic. Just every day, here's how I exist in the world, and particularly saying that a black feminist is a woman who loves women. If you are a friend to women, you are a feminist. So Brittany Cooper, Beverly Guy Sheftal, who wrote an endorsement for my book, she wrote the seminal text of collection of black feminist thought called Words of Fire. I'm a writer because of Gwendolyn Brooks, Toni Morrison, Jim Fullahiri, Edwidge Endicott, Juno Diaz. Yes, I've heard. I still believe he's talented. And to be honest, this is gonna sound silly, but I think I should own this. It occurred to me some years ago, I wanted to be a writer, and I started writing because I wanted to go to lunch with Toni Morrison. I wanted her to invite me to lunch. So that's my ultimate goal, is to be invited to Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison obviously is the gold star. So those are some influences. For the work that I do, particularly with my podcast and what I plan on doing when I'm on book tour, and as I meet and connect with more women, is, again, I want every single black woman on this planet to not just know, but to know in the way that I know potato salad is a gift from baby Jesus. I want every black woman to know that she is enough for herself. Whether she is partnered, whether she is single, whether she has children, whether she has her dream job, that truly she is enough, and that the only person to whom she is responsible for her choices is herself. I've covered some interesting topics on Unchained Unbothered. The most popular topic I have covered is women who are not monogamous. And I want to clarify, not women who accepted that men are hoes, so they just let their man cheat and they overlook it. I mean women who generally say monogamy don't work for me. I believe that my heart is big enough to love more than one person at a time, and they are polyamorous by choice. And one of the things that always strikes me as interesting when I've had 4 different women on telling their stories about their road to accepting this is who they were. I get DMs and messages every single time from black women who say this: I thought I was crazy. Or, me and my husband had a very honest conversation because a former lover came back into my life and I didn't want to not pursue it. But I loved my husband and I was happy being married, but I wanted to explore this other relationship. We had an open conversation about it, and we decided to open our marriage. And it's not been easy. It has required conversation and honesty, and there have been some downfalls, but for the most part, for the last 5 years, it's been working. I made the mistake of mentioning this to my good girlfriend, and then all the challenges, all the assumptions, something must be wrong. And even though I kept saying to her over and over again, there is nothing wrong. It's a choice that we've made. There was an assumption again that something was wrong with me and I was broken. I didn't really want that. Because again, if you are a heterosexual woman, your greatest goal is to get chosen by one dude who will offer you the prize of marriage. So I make a point to choose stories of women who make choices that are outside of the box of good black womanhood, because I just remember sitting in front of the television one Thursday for the season premiere of The Cosby Show, wondering what happened to Denise. They're bringing her back from the African bush studying with something at the college. Oh, I wonder what they're going to say. And she got out the fucking cab with a stepchild and a husband. And I remember a different world when Jaleesa was free and outspoken and she was dating Walter and they were having a good time. They married her and knocked up and she became an idiot. Immediately. I remember what they did to Whitley on A Different World. When she married Dwayne, all of a sudden, the last season, she was talking about opening up an art gallery. Now she's worried about making some fucking prune cobbler. Like, just dying. Oh my God, the prune cobbler. Like, that was his petting the bells, made him prune cobbler. That was his mom. It was very bizarre. So I choose stories to let, because I know there are a lot of women who think they're alone, who think that they're crazy. And I think representation is terribly important, even for those who choose traditional choices, to know that there is more than one mode, there's more than one prototype, and there is no such thing as a good or bad choice. There are only choices with consequences that you can stand behind or not. And if you can stand behind that consequence, then you're good. You have violated no agreements with anybody else, you are good. So I think that's sort of my approach to my work.
All right, so we know that the Keturah is going to do a selection reading from the book in a moment. I do want to wrap up with just one last question because, I've been blessed with an advanced copy of the book, so I've been marinating over it for some time now, and there are some fantastic themes. Being that you are an advocate and empowering people through this book, empowerment doesn't stop with simply the last page of the last chapter. So after all of these people who will be purchasing this book finish reading the book, what do you recommend they do afterwards?
I recommend, you ready? This is going to be good. You close the book and you live your damn life. You're welcome. Live your life. If you're going to have 6 babies for a little black man, tell me where you registered, girl. I'm going to get you some stuff. If you're going to get married to love of your life, as long as that open bar, I'm going to be there. If you realize, I have no desire for 24/7 love. Me too, I get you. Let's go to brunch. So, I'm not a Yama. I'm not trying to fix your life because you don't need a Yama or me to fix your life. Live your damn life.
Ladies and gentlemen, Keturah Kendrick. I am now going to cede the floor, and we are going to be privileged to hear a reading from No Thanks, Black, Female, and Living in a Martyr-Free Zone.
Thank you. The first extract I'm going to read is from the chapter titled Wherever You Go, There You Are. And it is simply my coming to a realization about myself and how I really felt about marriage, based on, again, being an attractive black woman in Africa with an American passport and never getting married. So just realizing I had a certain value system that I needed to own. I have managed to fall in love twice in the 3 years I have lived overseas. Although I have been in 2 different regions of the world for these 3 years, both of my loves have been passionate West African men. One bae had only left Africa when he moved to Asia, and the other bae had only traveled within the continent, venturing out past his own country only once. By West African number 2, I had become ever more clear on who I was and who I was not. Who I was, an American woman who without a doubt was descended from the continent of Africa. Who I was not, a woman who was interested in upholding the values of African culture that advertised itself as family-centered, but should be branded as patriarchy peddling. I remember coming to this conclusion when I narrowly escaped marriage to my Ghanaian boyfriend. We were in the early part of the relationship where there is little time for argument because all sex and post-coital confessions of love took up what few hours were left in the day after work. The first time we had a significant disagreement, he announced, this is a direct quote, y'all, "I do not want to discuss this anymore. You need to stop talking." Some of my friends in this room, and they're like, oh, what happened next? When he turned away from me as if I were a petulant teen who had overstepped her bounds, I felt it my duty to disavow him of the erroneous assumption he had made about the woman he loved. He seemed uncomfortable with my ignoring his edict to shut the hell up, but remained silent as I explained to him he was dating a 14-year-old woman and not a 14-year-old child. I would not silence myself because he decided it was too much emotional work to address the conflict we were having. He listened, although grudgingly, as I continued to state my concerns about our relationship. He presented his, and we came to a resolution that I knew would temporarily assuage the problems we were having. As we kissed and made up, I allowed this thought to rest on my mind. Our love is not long for this world, as this man is a fool. Throughout my early womanhood, I assumed my ambivalence about marriage was only because there were other things I wanted to do before I actively sought a husband. Then came Nigerian Bay. Through this relationship, I came to accept that I was not just indifferent to marriage. I was disinterested in it. Falling in love with two men who adored me and who were committed to commitment even more than they were committed to me made me be more honest about what I had been claiming was a core belief. I value marriage. My 3 years abroad have presented me with opportunities to live up to this belief, and each and every single time, my choices have shown otherwise. Sexism aside, Ghanaian Bay was a hard-working man who made me feel protected and loved. He had shown me several times that he was capable of more open-minded ways of coupling that flouted the strict gender roles prevalent in far too many parts of the continent. During one of the arguments that followed our first major one, he thanked me for telling him exactly why I was angry instead of appeasing him with silence. I could have easily worked on his mindset even more so over the years. He seemed a willing enough participant. But my life abroad had confirmed that I was more than enough for me. All of those quivering proclamations I had made in my 20s after having read some feministy stuff had now become solid truths. The amazing, purpose-filled life I was not sure I was supposed to even want, let alone accomplish, had become a life I knew existed for me and most other women I encountered. While love and partnership themselves did not threaten to risk the life I had built, the wrong marriage did. I stood to gain much more from keeping a bae I adored in my life than doing paperwork on a relationship that would cause me to suffer endless consequences that would come when or if my bae turned hubby made poor decisions I could not control. I didn't fantasize about building together. I felt already built, quite well too. The second extract is actually from the chapter that Marcel mentioned, the S word, being called selfish because you decided not to use your womb to give birth. The great gift of aging is the ability to release yourself from responsibility for others' reaction to you. The relinquishing of such burden comes with an additional prize. Finding people's disapproval or shock about who you are ridiculous. What has become truly entertaining for me are all the what-if questions I am asked. Although the inquirers use different words, they all are asking this question. When you say you don't ever want to be a mother, what do you mean by saying you don't ever want to be a mother? Look, what if your sister died in a freak accident and her husband also died, presumably in this same freak accident, and his mama also ended up dead, and your mama and the people they had previously named as legal guardians of their children, in case they both died in freak accidents, they all died too. Then you would take your nephews in, right? You would become a mother under those circumstances, wouldn't you? I mean, I know you keep claiming there is no circumstance under which you would mother, but let's just say, hypothetically, you are walking past this dumpster, right? You hear a baby crying, and you look in the dumpster, and you see this innocent baby just thrown away like he's worthless. Now, I know you would call the authorities, and you would watch over that dumpster baby until they got there. But let's just say, hypothetically, the authorities couldn't find any other person to take this baby. You know how there are thousands of infertile couples on waiting lists to adopt babies? Well, let's just say they all died. Or they had miracle pregnancies. And it's only you, Keturah. Then you would adopt that dumpster baby and raise it as your own, wouldn't you? Okay, so they got aliens. There are aliens from outer space who have kidnapped the cutest mocha baby with the biggest dimples you have ever seen. These aliens are threatening to take this beautiful human baby back to the alien world and raise it as an alien unless you agree to adopt it as your own. Wouldn't you save that baby from the alien apocalypse? Wouldn't you do that? I mean, surely you would be less rigid about this child-free thing if it meant saving a baby's very humanity, wouldn't you? The does your husband know question ranks high on Pamela's favorite of intrusive questions adults should know not to ask list. Pamela married Lawrence 3 years ago. She had been dating for 15 years by the time she sat down for a cocktail with Lawrence. Those many years of dating had made her focused and clear on who she was and who she needed to complement her life. I let Lawrence know on our first date I was not having children, she tells me. I had had enough conversations with men who got in their feelings because I had no desire to bear the children they had just as little desire to raise, to know I need to state who I was up front. And that's where I'll stop. Thank you very much.
Happy birthday, congratulations. Do you want us to say happy birthday?
Yes.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Keturah. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. We'll get the cake cut and we'll get you some cake as soon as possible. So here's what's going to happen next, boys and girls, ladies and gents. 15 lucky participants will get a free advanced copy of No Thanks. Yes, you're welcome. Give them a hand. Give them a hand. So as I said before, the book's pub date is June 18th, and it will be available on 150 online realtors and also bookstores in the States, of course, we're not here in China. So you all will have access to it on the 18th. But through quite a bit of work, quite a bit of finagling, quite a bit of discussing back and forth with my publisher, I was able to get 15 advanced copies like I gave to Mr. Marcel over here. In order to give to the first 15 people who signed up for this event. And I'm going to announce who those people are now. Are you nervous? Oh my goodness. Who gets a free copy? The first person to sign up who will win a signed copy, as we're all eating cake, of No Thanks is none other than Shannon Griffin. And she's here. Yes. The second person. Well, I'll go through all of this first, and then we'll do a sign up as we're getting cake and dancing. The second person sent me a screenshot when she signed up. She was like, "Look, I bought my ticket. I just want to make sure I get my book." She's not here tonight, but she bought it. She's in Cambodia. Nicole Carr Lawrence, Taryn Smith, Trish Ariche, Carla Murray, Nicole Henderson, Jasmine Williams, Nicole Whitley, Chanika, Patrick. Is Patrick here? How you doing, Patrick? I'm wonderful. Thank you for coming, Patrick. I just want to say, I don't know who Patrick is. On the real, I don't know who Patrick is. Patrick signed up to some random dreadline lady's book signing. And I appreciate you. I'm going to put your name in the sign copy like, thank you, Patrick. Lynette, Olivia, C. Ren, Kate, Yoki, and Faith Gary. All right, so here's how this will work. Can we get some music playing, Kristen? I'll be over here with the books. Those who were called, come on up and I'll give you your signed copy. Dance, be merry, get some cake, enjoy the evening, and chit chat if you have questions, if you want to talk more to me. I will be here until midnight, and then literally that's all I got in me. I can't stay up past midnight. That's all I got in me. So enjoy the evening, and thank you so much for coming. Have another drink, have some food, have some cake. If you want to chit chat, come on over. Thank you.